This episode is brought to you by Adaptive, the software for builders that automates draws, budgets, and bookkeeping with AI. For over a year now, I've been partnered with Adaptive, and they've just been an amazing game changer in terms of efficiency in our time and all our bookkeeping. From the time we get an invoice, we import it into their system. The AI codes it, cost codes it, job codes it. All we have to do is review it, pass it through the people internally in the office, all digitally, and then it gets approved and paid all via ACH. It's becoming extremely fast and saving us countless hours a day and a week. When it comes to draws, all of our budgets now are set in Adaptive as well. So now when we cost code against the draws, we can do our change orders, and then with a click of a button, we can submit these draws to our title companies or to our homeowners for faster payment. If you're looking to save time, and if you're looking to be accurate, I highly recommend Adaptive. Additionally, if you'd like to listen to one of their founders share the story of Adaptive, you can listen to episode number 15 on the Curious Builder Podcast. This episode is brought to you by River City Tile and Stone. For over 2 decades, I've been working with Mike Schmillen and their talented people over there. Here locally in Minnesota, they're just simply the cream of the crop. What I'm really impressed with is their communication and their commitment to excellence and really working with all the trades. I've known them for a long time, and really the people that stay there year in and year out, it's because they care about the craft that they're doing and they take a lot of pride in what they're doing. One of the things too, as a builder, that I really appreciate is their willingness to work with architects, designers, and your client. They can give you real-time info right in front of your clients. So if you want a quality install, if you're looking to build high-end custom homes, I'd highly recommend River City Tile and Stone. We're excited to announce that our first live event is now on sale on our website. On May 16th at 5 o'clock in the North House in Minneapolis, the Curious Builder is going to be hosting Brad Levitt, Nick Schiffer, Tyler Grace, and Morgan Molitor to a panel discussion about networking, marketing your brand and your business, and all things related to the Contractor Coalition, which is coming to Minneapolis on May 15th through May 19th. If you're looking at leveling up your business, I'd highly recommend attending. For those local here in Minnesota, it's right in your backyard. This would be an amazing time to network with some of the nation's best builders with the best building practices around. Join us for the Contractor Coalition, or if you just want to be there for one night and enjoy the networking and meet these superstars from around the country, again, that is going to be May 16th at 5 o'clock at the North House. Tickets can be bought at the contractorcoalitionsummit.com as well as the curiousbuilderpodcast.com.
I think one of the most important parts of this and just educating in general is that we oftentimes are educated by people that have done it and have successfully completed it. You know, the old guy that's done it, made billions of dollars, and now wants to share how he did it. Where I have found the most value that I've gotten are from the guys that are a year or 2 years ahead of me. So I'm learning something, I'm developing something, I'm seeing it work, I'm seeing it not work, and then I'm turning around into the guy that's chasing me and so on and so forth. It's like, hey, go left. I went right and it was a shit show. So go left. And well, I think that's the coattail effect and like the rising tide raise all ships, mentality. And that's how we really give back to the industry as a whole.
All right, welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today, I'm joined with Nick Schiffer with NS Builders and Modern Craftsman and Brad Levitt from AFT Construction and the Brad Levitt Podcast. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
good to be here.
Well, Brad is no stranger to the pod, but Nick, this is your first time on the Curious Builder, so welcome. For those that don't know Brad, you can obviously listen to one of his earlier episodes. I think it was like episode 5, and you guys are both podcast senseis in the space, so you probably don't need much of an introduction as you're very well known. I thought we'd spend most of the time talking about your development of the Contractor Coalition. So if you guys could maybe introduce yourself just briefly and then tell us a little bit about the Contractor Coalition, which is really how I met the both of you 2 years ago now.
Yeah, Brad, you go first. Alphabetical, man.
Okay. Here we go. So I'm Brad Levitt. I own a construction company here in Scottsdale, Arizona. We focus on luxury construction for the most part. We've grown over time, 27 employees now, and work on projects from 3,000 to 35,000 square feet, and have done some building science homes, net zero, and of course podcasts and other media. And then we'll get into why we started the summit and kind of the relationship Nick and I have had for a long time now. So
yeah, and I'm Nick Schiffer in Boston, own a construction company focused on luxury or high-end homes. primarily custom. We do a lot of renovation just being in the city of Boston, but we're also dipping our toes into the development side of high-end single families. And of course, the Modern Craftsman podcast and kind of everything that goes along with that in terms of thought leadership within the construction and building industry.
So when we met 2 years ago, I believe that was in Nashville, and that was your first event at the Contractor Coalition. So it was a 3-day event. For those that aren't familiar with it, we'll have you guys explain a little bit more about what it is. But let's go back a little bit of how it even started. My understanding is the both of you were in the same Builder 20 group. Is that where it started?
Yeah, and maybe I'll take the lead, Nick, here. But Nick and I have known each other for a long time. In fact, we met through Instagram, most likely, and then we've met at different events. And Nick and I are in the same Builder 20, which is super transformative for our business and career. And because Nick started his podcast before me, Modern Craftsman, then I started mine. Being in that space, you have a lot of people. Nick, I'm sure it's the same. That, hey, can I come mentor you for a day, Nick? Let me see your operation. And just realistically and feasibly, you just can't have people just come mentor you. You're still running your business. There's a lot to the day-to-day, as we all know, and you're still building the enterprise, if you will. And so Nick and I, one of the missing pieces when you're running an event is it's the event planning, right? It's the coordination, it's the hotel, it's the food. I mean, there's so much back end, and you need partners because you can't just do all this yourself. And so Nick and I, of course, align in so many ways, business, giving back, legacy, and just made a lot of sense to partner on it. And of course, Morgan was a great fit because, her skill set and her team, her back end, just making this happen from marketing to the event. And, and here we are, running last few years. It's been real successful. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, podcast is coming up on 7 years for us, which is insane to think. But the whole premise behind starting that podcast was exactly what Brad said, is people are reaching out through message or primarily, social media, like, hey, I'd love to just be a fly on the wall, or mentor you, or just understand how you do something. And, we had thrown an event like completely sporadically. We announced John, who used to be on the podcast, and I were talking like, hey, why don't we just post something and see if people want to meet up? It was like a quote unquote meetup, right? And 40 people showed up to this restaurant. First off, the restaurant was pissed because because they didn't have the space for it. We didn't think anyone was going to we were like, oh, maybe a handful of people. Secondly, we end up paying the entire tab. But we at that point, that's when the whole podcast kind of came to light. We're like, we need to be able to record a conversation and give it to everyone so they can be the quote unquote fly on the wall. And that's been great. And the podcast has been a great forum for, so many different types of conversations, very technical to very holistic to, personal to therapeutic. Like there's a lot of things that we cover on the podcast. And it's, truthfully, it's something that is just kind of an opportunity to share what it's like to be in this industry in different ways. But fast forward, Brad and I, we talk all the time. And like Brad said, we're very aligned with what our goals are, how our business is structured. We bounce ideas off one another. Like, how do we do this? How do you do that? And, ultimately it got to a point where it's like, man, it would be really great if we could share what we're developing. And, and there's a lot of medias to be able to do that. And, you would see some of that on my personal Instagram. You'd see some of that in the one-on-one consulting calls I was doing. But everyone kept saying like, it would be awesome to just have something bigger. And, there was always this idea of doing an event, but exactly what Brad said, like, I don't have the capacity to put together an event. And absolutely kudos to Morgan and her team. I mean, watching them pull it together, and they're asking for this restaurant. I'm like, thumbs up. Like, and then I get there, I'm like, what's this restaurant? For a menu. But the point is like they're so dialed with the event side of it, where it's exactly it that they were the missing piece. And Nashville was a huge test to that. And I think that we went into it optimistically, thinking that, hey, this could and should be a really great thing for the industry. And we were on I think it was at the end of day one, we realized we need to announce another date. And we've done what, I don't even know how many we've done at this point. Five.
Yeah, 5. And to Nick's point, what's interesting is like over the years, Nick and I, we both have been mentored. We spent a lot of money in coaching. We've part of a Builder 20. Not every builder gets to be part of a Builder 20, and so you just have this information. And as Nick spends a lot of time networking, as do I. And so there was just a need there that when we started our businesses, Nick and I align in this aspect, and I'm sure you do too, Mark. That like no one teaches you how to run a business, right? And especially in construction, it's so complicated. And Mark, you've said this where a good business owner that's bad at construction will be successful, but a good contractor is bad at business won't succeed. And so that's the core of this is really, and there's so many opportunities, fortunately for Nick and I, we've made relationships outside of just the builders, when you look at the vendors and suppliers, and there's a whole nother avenue of opportunity for builders that we're trying to essentially open the doors for that.
I say that saying almost as often as you say chase experience, not money. So I'm glad I have something you can tease me about now. One thing. Well, sorry to interrupt, Nick. You were going to say something about
I think one of the most important parts of this and just educating in general is that we oftentimes are educated by people that have done it and have successfully completed it. The old guy that's done it, made billions of dollars, and now wants to share how he did it. Where I have found the most value that I've gotten are from the guys that are a year, 2 years ahead of me, and I've realized that. So when I think about being able to share what I'm learning, I'm teaching as I'm learning. So I'm learning something, I'm developing something, I'm seeing it work, I'm seeing it not work, and then I'm turning around into the guy that's chasing me, and so on and so forth. It's like, hey, go left. I went right, and it was a shit show. So go left. And I think that's the coattail effect, and like the rising tide raise all ships, mentality. And that's how we really give back to the industry as a whole.
I heard something just recently from someone that had mentioned this about learn, earn, and return, and just the three phases of a business life. And I think that's just what you were speaking to that really resonates. One of my questions, I guess we'll talk about it right now, is so you've obviously had these amazing connections between the two of you and with Morgan Molitor with Constructing to Style. At what point did you realize that this was galvanized is going to take off? Because at what point did Morgan sort of enter your realm? Because it seems like she was maybe the missing piece, especially organizationally, to really kind of set the match to this fire. Because sounds like you guys been kind of brewing this idea how to develop it. Walk me through the maturation of once you met Morgan. Was that at BizCom? And if so, then how did it quickly then escalate to the next level?
Yeah, and I'll take this one, Nick. But I had Morgan actually on my podcast, and she was talking about these events, and before that I had been to BizCom. So I actually went to BizCom. I was a guest speaker. She had me come speak as one of the keynote speakers there, and then a breakout panel. And I was so impressed by the event, right? It just, I've been to a lot of events. It was very well put together. It was very professional. They had the right clientele there, right? And it was just super well done from just an event, organization. And so when that was the last piece, right? And so immediately I called Nick, and Nick within 2 seconds, like, I'm in. Like we had planned it, and then really when we knew it was going to take off, Nick would probably agree. We were in Sun Valley, Idaho, at our Builder 20, and we met early before our Builder 20 started. So we planned to go a little bit early and essentially plan the itinerary. And so as we're kind of going through the content and what we're going to speak about, Nick and I are both like, these are the topics that we think are most important for the builders at Old 10, and we know that this is going to hit. And I think Nick would agree that there was a lot of camaraderie and just, just when we were going through just the topics and content that we both had, we knew that it was going to be very beneficial for those that came.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember we were sitting in the lobby at breakfast, and we were making this list of things that we needed to talk about. And my thought going into that was that we were going to sit down, outline topics, add discussion points, add like all of these notes. And we put together the list, and we kind of looked at each other and we're like, you know what you're talking about, right? And it's like, yes, like let's just go up there and do it, because it's not something that we need to learn and disperse at that moment. These are the things that we know are a hot topic and that we've spent a lot of time learning. So let's just talk about it raw and fast forward to Nashville. And we saw that how well that was received. You're like, okay, this is like, we have something, and let's just continue to refine it and make sure that we keep it in that, in the form that we have.
One of the things that I appreciated, so that was, as I've mentioned previously on other podcasts, even on my own, when it was brought to my attention, actually my wife brought it to my attention, and she said, you really should go do this. I think you'd really find a lot of value in it. And it wasn't inexpensive. It was $10,000 for 3 days. And that was a pretty major investment for me at the time. I was like, I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm always open to new ideas, but I'm like, that's a lot more than most trade shows or other things that I've done. And I called Morgan, and I didn't know her, but she was in my state, didn't know you guys at all. And so I called Morgan. I said, hey, Morgan, this is Mark Williams. I build in your state. And she knew who I was. And kudos to her. She knows everybody. And so I just said, what do you think about this investment? I want to go, but I'm not somebody that wants to just sit and listen. I don't do lectures. Like, I need to be involved. You guys are going to laugh. Like, I ask a lot of questions, and I want to be involved. I'm not a passive learner. I'm a very active learner. And she said, you will make your money back in the first hour. And that was it. She credit her for selling hard, because nothing sells a salesman better than being sold. And I was like, I'm in. So I signed up, half hour later, and she was right. The first hour you guys talked about contracts, the difference between a design retainer and crediting it back to the eventual contract versus keeping it. And Nick, I think you were the one speaking about it. You're like, why are you doing the work for free? And a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, what am I doing? And so for that one thing, that's it. That paid for the entire Contractor Coalition, plus the 87 pages of notes that I'm still acting on 2 years later.
It's funny. It's funny because the one thing that people battle is the price of it. And I, like Brad, I've actually went to a lot of different seminars and events, some of them more than $10,000 and for a 1-day event. And every time I've left, the first thing my wife says is, was it worth it? How was it? And, and kind of what you just said is like, that it was a light bulb that went off. It wasn't that I went there and I learned the secret. It wasn't this like something I was missing completely. It was just being surrounded by people that were like-minded and had advice that was, tried and true. And, and for me, like all of the events that I've attended, that's what it's about. It's about being immersed into a group of people that are willing to invest, into themselves at a high price point. And it becomes this really, really powerful room of, the pages and pages of notes that you've put together. And it will be that one little thing that you've thought about in your business, or maybe that you've considered doing, but until you hear someone else say it, or say that it's worked, it's hard for you to act alone on. And that really is what, kind of stemmed the entire, cost structure around the event. Also, we wanted it to, not to mention, we wanted it to be in a really great spot. We wanted it to be in a great city, a little workation, though most of it is work. There's still, we're still mingling outside of the classroom per se.
And one thing that's funny, Mark, to that point is I remember this conversation because we hadn't met yet. And I remember Morgan talking to Nick and I, and she's like, she knew the content was going to be good because she had been working with the itinerary. But essentially, she made a comment to the effect of, you guys better deliver. There's this builder coming from Minnesota, and he wins all these awards. Like, he's super well known. And Nick and I are just like, don't worry.
You're the guy to impress, man.
Yeah, that's funny because what I build compared to what you build is not, shacks compared to, beautiful mega homes. So we build nice stuff, but you guys are on another level. But what's funny about that is she clearly was like, don't make me a liar, because I sold him hard. So you guys better back it up. You better have 4 aces in your hand.
Well, and the thing is, Mark, to Nick's point, all of us, for continuing education, there's an investment, right? You're going to pay for college. You're going to pay whatever you feel is going to advance your career. And where I agree with Nick is we've both been taught by people that have been successful in the industry, and now they're essentially consulting, coaching. It's very different being in peers. And this is part of the Builder 20 aspect, is that when you're working with peers that are living through it every day, currently, right now, it is different. The market's changed, economy's changed. It's a lot different now for us in business than pre-COVID than it was pre-recession, in 2008. And so these are moving targets, industry's changing. And that's why, there's a lot of value. And even more so outside of the content, you're there with 30, 40 builders in the room, and the relationships built, the friendships, the camaraderie. Essentially you have these mini little groups of, networks that are being built at each of these sessions. So
Well, and one of the big takeaways for me is obviously there's a tremendous amount of material that's covered. And frankly, it's like drinking from a fire hose. I mean, you cannot, the amount of information that comes at you is insane. I actually, this will be my third time going. I was at Huntington Beach, and you guys need to install a restraining order to keep me away from the fourth, I'm guessing. But, this one happens to be in Minneapolis, Minnesota, coming up here in May. And, I'm lucky enough to, obviously, we'll be hosting a live event on one of the Thursday nights before the kickoff. And it'll be, Tyler with Modern Craftsman, and you, Nick, as well as Brad and Morgan, on a big, stage, and just talking about everything and bringing you here locally. But it's amazing how fast the journey changes. And what I think you have really highlighted more than anything else is I've never been a private person. I'm always pretty open who I am, how I am at all phases of wherever I am. And so it's not hard to remember what you say or do because you're just the same. But what I'm going with this is that so many builders, especially the generation above us, have felt like they've been more secretive, and like they have a secret sauce, a secret recipe they're not willing to share. And I get the Builder 20, you have the non-disclosures. What really blew off my doors was you guys shared everything. You're like everybody that's here, and it really taught me that you guys lived it, the collaboration over competition. Morgan says it all the time, and now so do I. And I have found it so liberating. Someone has a question about a contract. Hey, Nick, you held up this cost me $15,000 to develop. Here, take it. Now you're gonna have to make sure it works in your state. It's really just a guiding principle. You need an employee handbook. I spent 1 year figuring this out. Here you go. You guys were so free at sharing information that for me in particular, I'm like, these are my people. This is my tribe. I was really blown away at that. Can you tell a little bit about how you came to that yourself? Because would you agree with that the generation above us was much more insular and built in silos, as you say, Nick?
Yeah. And to speak specifically so years ago, I have a specific, example of this more so on the actual carpentry work. And someone had reached out to me. I was installing shingles on the side of my house, and he had reached out to me about a better way to install the batten on the side of the house so I wouldn't damage the shingle as I move the batten up the wall. And he walks me through. I'm like, oh my God, that's genius. Thank you so much. So I'm doing it on the side of my house. I decided to do a video on it, and I posted it on, at the time, Snapchat. And the guy lost his mind. And he's like, dude, that's a secret. You don't share, you can't share that. And at the time, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think about it. I was just like, this is how I operate. I just I learn, I share, I learn, I share, I learn, I share. And I ended up, coming to the realization that listen, I'm not the one that, he's not the one that came up with this idea, and nor am I the first one to share. And I forget who said it to me, but it was like, dude, this old house has been doing this for 40 years. You're doing it on a different platform. You're doing it on social media, and this old house has been sharing how to do this stuff on TV for 40 years. It's no different. And so it was that. And the other side of it was if I reached out to you, Mark, and I said, hey, Mark, do you know how to, put together a subcontract agreement? And you said no, or yes, I do, but I'm not sharing with you. No problem. I would move on, but I would never ask you another question. I would never ask you for anything else. Where I looked at it is if I know something, let me share it with you, because I want to be the guy that has the information that people come to, because not only am I giving back to the industry, but I also know that now I'm building equity and trust with someone, where it's over time, some of the guys that have been to the coalition have referred me to projects where it's hey, I know a great guy up in Boston because I've provided value to them. And it's just this exchange in value where I think that when you are, so you keep everything close to the chest, it's fine and it will work for you, but it's very, lack of better terms, it's just very selfish, where I look at what my legacy will be and what I want to be, when I leave this world. I want to be known for building cool ass homes, but I also want to, be known for helping the industry, in some way, and promoting this industry as a viable and, rewarding career.
One thing that's interesting about that is, because I agree with everything you said, I also think intent matters a lot. And I don't know how to speak to this in terms of words, but feeling. If somebody asks you for help, genuine help, I don't know too many people that say no to that.
A
I
lot of
think
people though.
You think so? I don't know. I
Yeah.
would disagree with that. I think if people ask for help with a motive or an agenda or like a very like kind of a subtle, sneaky way, I think it comes out. But like if someone calls you and says, I need your help, I'm in a tough spot. I have a hard time believing people say no. Do you think people actually ask for help with malicious intent?
Well, I think people definitely say no. With malicious intent, I think that that's probably a smaller group of people. But I think that your view on it is it's optimistic. It just, we all know, like Mark, you're an optimistic guy. Like I tend to be on the same side of it, and I would think that everyone wants to help. But the reality is, it's easier to say no or I don't know. It's just way easier. And if you think about the majority of the population in general, just like people live to be comfortable and live an easy life where it's good.
Well, I guess like where I'm going with this is that if I think it's actually harder to ask for help than it is to give help. Now, granted, you created the Contractor Coalition, you created the podcast to help fill a need because so many people were asking.
Mhm.
But in the general span of life, and maybe I'll just speak as a man who's also married, and you guys all are too, like men in particular, we're pretty bad at asking for help because we think we can do it. I think honestly, one thing the podcast and just in general, as you get older, you realize you're actually not great at everything. You're hardly good at anything. So you might as well ask for help a lot. And the sooner you can come to the place that you can have some humility and just simply ask for help and say, I don't know, it also encourages the other person to do the same. And there's a sense of vulnerability. And I think that's one thing, even in podcasting, that I've learned pretty quickly on, that the more often, and frankly, any interpersonal communication, when you offer up things about yourself that may be seen as a weakness or a failing, that it's gonna make the other person feel safer to also share their insecurities or whatever they're dealing with.
You're spot on. And sorry, Brad, I'm hijacking here.
You're
but
good.
It's, I posted about this a couple months ago, and I was talking about a situation in high school. And it was, I remember the teacher saying, does anyone not understand the problem? No one raises their hand. And then it's like, but I don't understand it. And I don't want to be the kid that raises their hand. And then all of a sudden you raise your hand. It's like, I actually don't understand it. Teacher turns around. It's like, oh, okay. Does anyone else not understand it? And then 4 other hands go up. And it's like, yeah, you just need that one person to be vulnerable because yes, like I can only speak to being a man, because like that's, and I'm the same way. It's very difficult to ask for help. And it's also very difficult to ask for help in different ways, where typically, at least for me, like I have one outlet that I know I can ask for help. And it's usually not formatted in a way that looks like I'm asking for help. It's just like dancing around a question like, hey, you mind explaining what you mean there? But it's just, that's the reality of it. And and you're absolutely right. The moment you open that vulnerability up and you open up that humility, it allows, kind of that entire room to drop their shoulders and engage with it.
Brad, how have you found, in terms of sharing information and people reaching out to you? Is your experience quite similar?
I think it's similar in the sense that when I started, and I've been pretty open about this, when I started my career here in Scottsdale, I mean, there is a good old boys club. There's a lot of builders that have been here a long time and very established in the Phoenix area. And I think that's common for many areas in the US. And it was a struggle. Even a former employer I had, trying to network and understand some different, aspects of running an organization once it's your own, very closed door, not very collaborative. And I think that's pretty common. And, that's changed. And this is that collaboration over competition I was talking about. But, at the core of it, I think there's a lot of confidence that, us three specifically and many others in our network have a mentality of abundance, not scarcity. And I think that's what it comes down to. We're all pretty confident people in our brand and our product and what we do, our communication styles. And so with that, as you share, I found that, hey, generosity always precedes prosperity. That's one of my big things too, that as you share information and share content and build that network, like it always pays itself back. Maybe not immediately, but it will. But as Nick mentioned, I receive referrals from other builders and other contacts that, are applicable to me in my area. And the reason that these builders shared is because they know, what kind of people, what kind of operation we have. And so I've just been big that those proceeds always come. You just have to lay the groundwork.
What have you So we've kind of obviously nailed that one pretty good, I think. In terms of like the Contractor Coalition, from, you guys have had 5 now, coming up on your 6th. What are some of your takeaways? What have you learned both about yourself and your own practices? Like Brad, you just mentioned you have 27 employees. At Nashville, you had 19.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you're growing your business while you're helping other people grow their business. I have to imagine, like any educator, as you interact with the builders in the room, regardless of their experience or their depth of knowledge, you're learning as you're teaching. I mean, don't they always say that, people that are teaching really have a huge grasp of it, but you're always learning. What are some of the takeaways that you've learned from people that have attended, and maybe just speak to your experience on that point?
Well, a young mentor I had in high school, I remember he said, if you want to be successful, you hang around successful people, right? Like, you are who you hang out with. If you have bad friends, you're going to gravitate to things that they do. We all know that being adolescents and teenagers, but it's no different in business. When you're in there, and there is the truth, I will touch on this point that you made, Mark, is that when you are instructing that content, whenever anyone who's taught something or spoke, you're going to prepare, right? So by preparing, you're going to do some in-depth study and research, and so you're kind of building up to this understanding of the topic, whatever it may be. Then when you teach it, you become, I don't want to say an expert, but it becomes more ingrained, right? So now you can take those principles and really have them top of mind so that you're applying them firsthand. But going back to the networking, when I'm there and I'm around every building, it doesn't matter if they've been in business 6 months, like some attendees who have been at the conference, or 20 years like you, Mark. The thing is, and it's the same thing for the podcast. Every time I interview guests on the podcast, they'll say something, 1 or 2 or 3 things. And I'm like, that's brilliant. It's a great idea. That's something I can apply. And so when you're around successful people, when you're around entrepreneurs, it's these little nuggets you get in conversations at dinner, questions when Mark's in the front row raising his hand, asking a bunch of questions, these come up. And so that's the value. I mean, I look for, Nick and I that attend this, it's just, you leave with an energy. I know when we left Austin, there was this huge energy just based on the feedback and some real applicable things that all of us applied. And even before the conference started, we went with Matt Schoberg and we toured some of his homes. That's part of it, part of these conferences now. So we're doing home tours. There were some things that happened in that communication with Matt down in Austin that now we've applied internally at FT. So I think there's just always good things that come, in those environments.
Yeah, I would second that. I think, to summarize, being around like-minded, good people just continues to, hold yourself accountable for what you're out there trying to achieve.
This episode is brought to you by Alpine Hardwood Flooring. They've been our partner now for over a decade, installing all our wood floors on all our new homes as well as our remodels. And on a personal level, Adam and Anthony Jankala, the owners, are just absolutely amazing people. They've been so supportive of my career as well as doing anything we need to make sure that our clients are happy. And they work so well with our other vendors and trade partners at not only protecting their product, but also ensuring everyone else's looks great. So if you're looking for a wood floor or for a refinish, I highly recommend Alpine Hardwood Flooring. Lake Society Magazine is Minneapolis' premier target market boutique lifestyle and design publication. It embodies the unique lifestyles and design of the Minneapolis City Lakes neighborhoods. From Lake of the Isles to Lake Harriet, it showcases the best in local design projects by both premier builders, architects, and interior designers in this area. Lake Society Magazine has the look and feel of a national publication with glossy covers, high-end finishes. It's mailed directly to upper bracket single-family homeowners in the City Lakes area, and it's the perfect local coffee tabletop publication. Subscriptions can also be available through the website lakesocietymagazine.com. Additionally, publisher and founder Karen Steckel has over 27 years in the local magazine publishing industry and has a passion for high-end photography and quality graphics. Her commitment to quality, visual simplicity, and beauty are strongly reflected in her beautiful Lake Society magazine.
So you've had several hundred people come through the classes. Any idea how many, it's amazing how many people come a second time. Has that surprised you? Like, I know obviously Nathan Marsala has gone to 2 or 3. I've gone to 2, coming up on 3. Gutelli's have been on 3. I believe Meg Billings, who was just last week's episode for me, has been to 2. She said her husband would leave her if she went to 3 this year because she's got too many commitments. But has it surprised you that people keep coming back for more?
I don't think so. I'm sure Nick would say the same. I mean, we've had multiple. I mean, many that have come to multiple. And the reason being is that just like Nick and I continue to attend different conferences, and I'm sure you'll attest to this, Mark, is that there's so much information that you're going to take away 5, 6, 7 things that go impact it. Well, now you get into I don't want to say mundane, you get into the reality of going back and the day-to-day of your business, and it's hard to implement everything. So when you come back, you kind of get that refresher course to say, I missed this. Like, why didn't I do this? Why did I forget about that? And now it's top of mind. I'm gonna go focus on that. And so I think there's always a continual, just like all of us that are, work out, it's continual.
I think it's similar. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
Well, two things. I think that, number one, it's exactly that. Like the first time you go there, you're trying to, capture everything. And then the second time you're able to you're able to filter through some of the things and hyper focus on something, because the first time it's just overwhelming. I don't know what to focus on. The other side of it is, there's an event that I went to 2 years ago that I was talking to one of the instructors, and he was asking if I was going to come back, and I was like, I really want to. And after, I was like, I'm not even sure why. And it really was just to be around that environment. That was it. Because it wasn't something I went to, and it wasn't a classroom by any means. There was a little seminar and talking about leadership and things like that, but it wasn't this hyper focused, task oriented thing. It was just being around those type of people. And for me, that would be the worth the price paid to go to an event like that.
I mean, I 100% agree with that. I came back and I was on cloud 77, forget cloud 9. I had so much, energy. And for me, like,
Mark has energy.
Oh man, Red Bull and lines of Coke, to quote Tyler Grace. And, but I had so much energy and so much inspiration. To your point, it's hard to know how much of it was the information that was shared versus the collaboration and like spirited people and just being inspired by each other as, human beings, builders, passionate, you have similar interests. And then you obviously gravitate to certain people even within it, right? I mean, even today, it's got to be kind of cool as, the teachers or the senseis of the group. I probably talked to Nathan Marsala probably, 2 or 3 times a month at least. He just sent me a picture of his watch and just said he closed his first sponsorship deal. And I was like, attaboy. It's like an informal Builder 20 group that you have these little micro networking groups that start spinning off. And tell me a little bit, like, from your guys' point of view, seeing what some of us have done even under kind of your guidance. I texted Brad the other day, I was giving him crap. I said, you didn't give us a fish. You taught us how to fish. So it's your own fault, if we have a boat full of fish. What is it like watching people who have attended your seminars to actually put it into action and see real results?
I think it's super cool. Like, especially through the lens of social media, because it's like, I mean, we'll talk about you started a podcast, you started brand deals, you started hyper focusing on what your true North Star is in the business. We talk offline too. And there's realignment in what your goals are. And I think that when I talk to some of the attendees and I see it unfold on social media, that's really cool. And, and strictly because I knew that at some point something was said to encourage them to make that decision or go after that opportunity. Rob in Ohio working with Rockwell, like, it's super cool to just see that unfold and see, great people be supported by great brands and vendors and that's the whole other side of it, where it's like we've built some really amazing partnerships with vendors that truthfully they want high quality partners in the field, builders and contractors, and that's not an easy thing to just filter through the thousands and thousands of builders out there. And here we can give back to the vendors that are supporting us by bringing really high level people to a table and saying, hey, here are the people that you want to be partnering with.
Well, and I'll take that. I mean, just to build on what Nick said. So we have at IBS, we have a couple events, right? That I'm speaking at and partnering with some vendors. All of the other partners are from the Contractor Coalition. So they're all attendees that are speaking or in this event. The day after the Builder Show, we're doing an event here in Phoenix, and every builder coming has attended the summit. So looking at just that exposure they've had and what they built, it's just been incredible to see the success they've had. And, from social media deals and vendor relationships and even more so, it's, there's the vendor relationship is very valuable in a lot of reasons, not just from a, sponsorship level, but also from a product, right? All of us need product. We need, contacts in the industry and to run our business. And that's been, very important.
Looking at what the future holds, where do you guys see the future of the Contractor Coalition, and what are some things that you're inspired by?
I think that the, big picture, I think it's just going to be more and more refined. Are you good?
Yeah.
Mark leaving?
Go ahead. I think I can hear you, Nick. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
My bad.
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that big picture, it's just going to be more and more refined. I think that the event, there's so much strength to it already with, attendees and vendors, that now it's a matter of how do we continue to refine our message? How do we continue to provide more value to everyone attending? And I think, Brad, you and I talk about it. It's like, how do we package more information in a way that we can get more out, but not completely overwhelm them? The other side of it is, how do we have some sort of quote unquote continuing education beyond that, where it's, are we doing, monthly calls or quarterly calls, or building, a group outside of, what that event is? I think that, looking at the future, that's where there's a lot of opportunity where, that can be our pinnacle event. But there's so much more underneath that, where it's like, hey, yeah, we talked about contracts for an hour, in Minneapolis, but if you want, here's a course that will walk you through step by step on how to set up our contract and the things that you should really pay attention to. So now that we're just continuing to kind of extrude more information out of everything that comes out in that short amount of time. And
one thing that we'll be doing, and Nick and I know over the sessions, the content's always a little bit different. We add different information, as it has evolved. I know specifically with AFT and our growth and KPIs and leadership committees and different things we've implemented since I had some of my Builder 20 come out, including Nick, audit my organization. There's some good things happening, even with Builder Trend, like that we're implementing with Builder Trends. We move software. We've taken full Builder Trend capability and integrated in our organization. So there's some things that really expedited our, helped us expedite in our growth, and that they've helped us be more efficient. And, these are things that we want to share, just successes that we've had and mistakes, so that no one makes the same mistake we have. So
do you think, it's kind of what you're talking about, Nick, do you think you guys will develop even like almost like an online curriculum where people, either both alumni or people that even can't make it, you could have like standoff, one-off courses, almost like an education university? Or is that like just a whole nother level of organization? Because in case people didn't know, you guys already are running like 20 other businesses. There's only so much time you have in the day. How far do you take this education piece?
Well, truthfully, the answer is yes. That is something that we are working on. And, the benefit to that is, it takes a lot of setup time and a lot of organization to put it together. But then it's there, right? And it's evergreen, and someone can pick and choose when they want to go through that course and read through that material. And as it evolves, or as we update our process, we can always go in there and update or add to that. So yeah, I mean, short answer is yes, that is something that we definitely want, because, similar to, having a live event or having a meetup at a bar and having all these great conversations, it kind of lives and dies there. Sure, you go back and have a notebook and, and have all these great things, but how do we share more of that with more people? And, the live event, there's obviously you're paying a higher ticket price for the immersive experience, and of course, being part of that in a live setting, but there's still value that we can rip out of that and share to a greater audience.
I mean, that's really valuable. I can see how long-term, I mean, not only is that an amazing marketing display and educational display, but for long-term, even residual income, right? I mean, if you're having a university where people could, for $100, learn how to do something, you obviously get 10,000 people to do that. That's a lot of money. Speaking a little bit of the money side of things, let's talk a little bit about brand partnerships and some of the things that, even the coalition has sort of explored. I've done some smaller stuff here, and we're about to launch it in a quarter, probably in Q2. I'll tell you more about it when I have it fully developed, but it's basically like, rather than a 3-day summit, it's like a 3-hour meeting that you really encourage people just to get together and really do some of the fundamental things that you guys have kind of showed us even in your longer courses. But there's a huge appetite that sponsors want to be a part of this. I think they get very quickly just how important it is not only to support it, but also who wouldn't want to be a part of it. Tell us a little bit about, people that on the outside that say, hey, how do we support the Contractor Coalition? How do we sponsor this? What kind of appetite is there for that out there right now?
Well, what's interesting is you look at Rockwool, Emser, Anderson, Builder Trend. I mean, just to name a few that have participated, they do a lot of events, right? They sponsor a lot. They're active in the community. They're active in the field and the industry. They get more out of this because they know the people there are really committed to their brand and to the company and reputation and everything they're building. And so it's just amazing to see, their involvement and the feedback. I mean, you can go look at some of the reviews. I mean, we talk to them all the time, and they're like, we're in for the next 2, we're in for the next 4. Like, they want to be part of this because they see the value just on, the caliber of people that are attending.
I think that brands in general have, we've been seeing this for the last, almost 10 years, that they've been shifting their marketing towards more of the influencer side, and influencer just kind of encapsulating everything we're talking about, right? And, and it started with some of the big tool companies were some of the first to do it, where, there was a good 2 years where this particular tool company was literally sending out tools to everyone. Like, I would have tools just show up to my doorstep, not asking for them for no reason. And you would watch social media change, and all of a sudden everyone has this tool, everyone's talking about it, and they felt as though they were required to talk about how great it was because they were getting it for free. And that has obviously evolved over time. But my point is that they see the value in marketing in a different way. It's not so high level. It's very direct, person to person, business to consumer. And when you're doing it in a niche group of 30 highly qualified, builders and contractors, you're talking to someone that is there because they want to be there, because they invest and they want to better their business. And that relationship, if that vendor is going to provide value, then that builder is going to provide value back because they're of that caliber.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's interesting. This is more of a personality thing. I'm guessing how each one of you are going to respond, but I'm not going to gauge it. So I will just say it like this. If someone was to send me a bunch of tools to my doorstep, and I am not the handiest guy, I'm no Nick Schiffer, I will, but let's put it back a step. If I'm going to go buy something, my own personality set is such that I am not somebody that's going to do exhaustive research. But what I will do is I will go to an influencer like a Nick Schiffer or, like a Brad or whoever I'm following, and I'll say, what do they do? Or if I know them personally, right, I'll call another trimmer, I'll call another painter, which paintbrushes do you like the best? That's just my personality set. Do you have versus me doing all the research myself? Do you have a sense, is that in the industry of building, how many people do you think ask somebody for a recommendation and then go with whatever that recommendation is? Because I'm basing my decision based on who I trust. And it's a value statement and who you are as a person. And I'll live with the consequences after, because I've already made my decision on who you are, versus going and figuring out yourself. Do you think it's 50-50? And how would each one of you answer that question for yourself?
It's way higher.
It's way higher.
Way higher than that. I think that the majority of purchases are being made by being influenced to make that decision. Like I think very few people are doing exhaustive research. They're looking for one person that they can trust to say do it, and they're moving forward with that decision. It's just the world we live in. I was talking about this earlier about gym shorts out of everything, because I can't tell you how many Instagram ads I get for gym shorts, and it's like finally after 15 times of seeing the same ad, I was like, fine, I'll order them. And I'm
sure they were black. As long as they're black, you'll wear them.
I do have red ones.
No, please. You're a liar.
They're dark red. But it's because, and ultimately I was influenced by it because I like built trust with that brand. Now it wasn't someone influencing, it was that company putting the touch points in the right spot that eventually I bought. And but for I can speak, I actually didn't know this about a particular brand I work with. They had told a colleague of mine that every time that we talk about their product, they are so particular in the way I talk about it, and it doesn't, like, they don't give me a script or anything, but when I use it, I have to be installing it correctly. So we talk a lot about the installation of it, but every single time we post about it, they get no short of 100 phone calls asking for the same product because for the same thing. Wow. And I've seen the flip side of it too, unfortunately, where I wasn't intentionally bad mouthing a product, but I was talking about a product failure. And I had the vendor I bought the product from call me and irate because 200 orders were canceled that day.
Ooh.
And I smoothed it over, but I was like, at the moment I was like, wow, that's a lot of influence. Like, I just was talking about the fact that it was a piece of stone that cracked under heat, and all of a sudden, like, they were like 200 architects called and were like, we're canceling our order. We're going to switch the material. Yeah. So my point is like, it's way higher. And I think that, as like if you can simplify decision making, that's what everyone wants. Tyvek's a great example. I know I'm rambling, but it used to be just Tyvek. Everyone would use Tyvek, Typar, or tar paper. And that was it. Now you have all of these WRBs, and everyone's talking about which one that they want, and this one's better, and that one's better, and this one's better. The reality is, like, none of them are really better. It's how they get installed, and I get, I and you and Brad, like, we all get influenced to use a particular brand that we trust, and we trust that it works because it works for us, or someone told us it works, and then we try it and it does work, and that's it.
It makes sense. I mean, obviously, I know you guys are both sport enthusiasts, but like, obviously the movie Air, right? Michael Jordan. I mean, Nike famously, hey, Michael, please wear these Nikes. And, you've got a multi-billion-dollar business because of it.
I think that was one of the most successful influencer deals ever.
I mean, pretty soon Modern Craftsman, Curious Builder, and AFT will be right after Nike, but I'm sure we have a ways to go.
Yeah, but to that point, I mean, even as you take it farther, I mean, we're building our house. We're going to be breaking ground in April on our personal home. And the reality is, how many of us have clients, right, and peers? Hey, would you use this product in your home? Is this something you really stand behind? And when you put that product in your personal house too, from an influencer standpoint, or just from the reach we have, there's some, an endorsement, if you will, and the brands see the value there too, and they see the brand. The brands see who's putting in the product. When they see someone like Nick or Matt Reisinger or you, Mark, I mean, whoever it is, or Meg, who you had on recently on your podcast, they see these are people that believe in the product, that are putting it in, and there's validity there, because these are people that are doing it day to day. It's not just, it's a little bit different than the Nike deal. Well, actually it's not, because Jordan was wearing the shoes in every game. So I can't, but some of these brands will hire influencers just to say it, because you're getting paid, whereas we're actually using it and living it every day.
I mean, I think most of your ad reads and most of the stuff that you're pitching, you're individually using. And not that I wouldn't be open to exploring the use of a new product, but for right now, in the infancy of, the Curious Builder, I'm only a year and a half in, I pretty much have kept it to basically sponsors that, of course, I either believe in or use myself. Because speaking from a first person point of view, it's like, you don't have to sell it. You just have to share your experience. So I think that's why it also becomes such an easy thing to sell, and why people believe it, because there's no put on. There's no real salesmanship. You're just saying, this is my experience. It's gone great. This is what I like to use. End of story. And it kind of just accelerates after that.
Well, Mark, you and I are big fans of Pella. They've performed in so many ways for both of us in different markets. And you come to the summit, you end up getting both of us to go to Iowa and film commercials for them. So
that was pretty funny. They, I mean, for those that haven't seen it, you can check out Pella.com and also the Curious Builder, our YouTube channel, which only has 5 followers, but that also has it on there. And anyway, but the long story short was, it was funny about that, Brad, is your name came up recently, and I may have a surprise for you at some point. But the Pella thing, as you're being coached, and I think Nick spoke about this, about him saying something and then someone getting upset with him. I learned what the definition of puffery is. Nick, do you know what the definition of puffery is?
No.
It's a legal term. Brad, you were there, because I kept going off script. And every time I went off script, like legal department would be like, no, you can't say that. No, you can't say that. No, because I like to sell, right? So I would maybe add it up. But turns out if you say like, if you were to say Pella is the best company in Minnesota, well, unless you have the empirical data to prove it, like you could get into a lawsuit. Or I could say Pella is the best company in North America. Again, problems. But if I say Pella is the best company in the universe, everyone understands that that is an outlandish statement, puffery. So anyway, I need to come up with like a bumper sticker, like the Papa of Puffery or something, because the poor legal department was absolutely in fits when I was in Pella, because I just kept coming up with these things that I couldn't say.
He did go off script quite a bit and get in trouble by the legal that was on staff there.
That's
well,
amazing.
as we come skidding into a stop here to respect your times, obviously the next Contractor Coalition, we've just spent the last hour, talking about its value and what it is. For those that are listening, you guys can go to, contractorcoalition.com. If you're here.
Summit.
Sorry.
.com.
Why don't you go ahead and say it better, Nick?
You're going off script, Mark.
I see. This is what happens. All right. Contractorcoalitionsummit.com. You can pick up your tickets. It's coming to Minneapolis. What is it? May
15th to the 19th.
15th to the 19th. Interesting. You guys are doing it over the weekend this year. What was kind of the impetus behind that? Was this just travel schedules?
Well, we did that in Austin because we found that, everyone's pretty busy. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is pretty tough. Whereas you go over the weekend, Friday, hit or miss, but then Saturday, Sunday, they're typically phones off so they can really pay attention. And, that was kind of a request to make it a little bit easier for people to attend.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's some feedback. I think actually on the 16th. So we're doing, as I mentioned previously, we're doing a live event where we're going to have a standalone event. So even if you're not going to the Contractor Coalition and you're in Minneapolis, you can attend and listen to everything that you guys have to share and enjoy some networking. And I think actually during the day we're going to tour one of my homes. I think it was a modern home I built last year. And so all the builders that are flying in, you're going to get a tour of Mark D. Williams Custom Homes finest. So excited to
big time.
Show you what you got. Yeah, big time. Brad will be like, well, this is the cabin next to my lazy river that I just did. All right. Well, we'll have all your guys' contact in the show notes. Any parting words of wisdom?
Ooh, I wasn't expecting that. Parting words. I mean, let's just stick with collaborate over compete. I like that.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah. Power of networking.
Power of networking. Thanks for coming on, boys. Appreciate your time. And we'll see you guys here in a couple of months. Brad, I'm a little disappointed that we aren't having the Contractor Coalition in January, because everyone knows that Brad loves the heat. I hate the heat. Brad hates the cold. And so I really tried to get him. Actually, of all the winters, Brad, it has been there's no snow on the ground.
We
had one cold week all year. It's ridiculous. It's like in its 40s. I feel like I live in Nebraska.
Brad came to Boston. I don't remember what month it was, but he had to come
December.
It was December, so not the coldest month either. But he came because he had to make sure I could be part of the Build to 20 group, and he packed 18 jackets.
It's a true story.
I was like, "What are you putting in my back seat?" He goes, "All my jackets, just in case I get cold." I'm like, "Bro, that you could stay warm in Antarctica."
I saw a picture of him in a down fluffy jacket, and he was with his daughters or something, and I thought he was in Phoenix. And I'm like, you are a baby. And then he's like, no, I'm actually up in like Sun Valley, Idaho skiing. I'm like, okay, fine, that's fair. But I honestly thought he was in Arizona.
My blood's too thin in Arizona. Sorry. So
it's all good. All right, thanks, boys. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Curious Builder Podcast. If you like what you listened to, if you found that you had a lot of value, please share with your friends. Share with other people in the industry or even people outside the industry that want to better their business. Please rate and review anywhere that you listen to your podcast. And thank you again for listening.